Hello and welcome to another episode of the D.A.R.E podcast. We're all about successful mindsets with global leaders and celebrities. And I'm delighted to have a very special guest with us here today. His name is Nick Leeson. You might know Nick from the Hollywood movie, which is The Rogue Trader. I'm really happy to have you here today, Nick. And we literally only met. This is the first time we're meeting in person.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm really glad you showed up. I was thinking, is this really going to be Nick Leeson showing up? So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself to our lovely viewers?
Yeah, so my name's Nick Leeson. I started work in the City of London at aged 18 during the Big Bang era. And advanced very quickly through the organisations that I worked for. Started with Coutts & Co, which is Queen's Bank, or where the royal family keep their money, I suppose is the easier way to describe that. Worked at Coutts & Co for a couple of years, moved over to Morgan Stanley, the big American investment bank, and then after a couple of years at Morgan Stanley was headhunted to Barings, which was the oldest merchant bank in England at the time. And aged 25, I would have been running the operation in Singapore on the CIMEX International Monetary Futures Exchange. And, I was pretty much the ascending star within the organisation at the age of 25. But at the age of 28, I was starting a prison sentence. So, a very spectacular fall from grace over that period as well.
And I remember that because as that was happening, I was starting my career in banking. So that was definitely big news on the derivatives trading floor. Why don't we go all the way back? So that was who you were. Clearly, the R in D.A.R.E stands for Reinvention, and you've reinvented yourself now. You're a private investigator, a public speaker. You're an author with 2 books, Rogue Trader and Coping with Stress.
I think I've got 3.
Have you? What's the third?
I think it was something about dealing with debt.
Right. There you go.
During the 2010 sort of financial crisis in Ireland. I think it's probably just an Irish publication. Maybe that's why.
Well, I'm sure lots of listeners and viewers will be out there trying to get a copy of that. So why don't we start at the very beginning?
Yeah.
I always like to find out who's the person behind, the headlines. What were you like as a child? Because I think sometimes childhood can really help form who you are and the path to success. And I know when I was doing my research, you said your mother really instilled education in you.
Yeah, she was, I think she was the one that drove the need for success. And that success, in her opinion, would have come through education. So classic working class sort of values, and a desire to achieve more, do better, have a more stable life, a bit more money. All of those sort of things that working class people aspire to. I don't think it's quite, as obvious as sort of trying to become middle class or something like that, although I can see that's an aspiration. So, there was never a lot of money around. I mean, my dad was a plasterer and my mum did a bit of work in some of the hospitals. But mainly, it was a normal upbringing, but it was a very sort of working class upbringing. So, we'd leave home fairly early in the morning, spend all day outside playing football, running, playing golf, whatever you could we lived opposite a school. So I used to go over there and hit golf balls all over the place and smash a few windows from time to time.
But the neighbours loved you.
Well, no, I didn't do it to the neighbours. It was the school.
Oh, right.
So one of my younger sisters used to go into school on a Monday and grass me up. So, but they never came knocking really.
And this is in Watford, yeah?
Yeah, well, it's in Leavesden, which is just a small suburb of Watford. It's where Harry Potter's studios are these days. It wasn't. There was a little aerodrome there, Rolls-Royce at the time. So, yeah, did well at school, was ahead of the rest of the classes from I can't remember what the things were called that we used to do back then. But it was, a progress of educational tests. And I was always sort of a year ahead of where the majority of the class were. So doing a bit of that, playing football, like I said, for the school. And Then moved on to a senior school, Parmeters, which is one of the best schools in Hertfordshire. It came originally from the East End, Bethnal Green. So it used to be a grammar school in Bethnal Green, but then they decided to, I don't know if they were countrifying it or what, but it was moving to Hertfordshire. So they finished off 1 year in Bethnal Green, and then the school transitioned to Hertfordshire, so just down the road from where I lived. So difficult school to get into.
Did you have to do an exam and things like that? Yeah,
you did. Yeah, and I mean, I think the year I got in, it wasn't that difficult, but it's increased over the years. So it's a foundation school. I think has a lot of funding. Does very, very well. Sports academically. It's had people go on to play cricket for England and all sorts of things. A lot of good work done there. I think they try to ignore me in terms of on the list of past pupils. I went to see Jack Whitehall in perform in the 3 Arena, I think it was, in Dublin, and he was saying that or one of the sketches that he was doing about where he comes into the past pupils for the school that he went to. So he's very much down the bottom of it. I think I'm quite similar. They would probably prefer not to have the recognition that I went there. But yeah, no, look, where they pull the pupils for the school that I went to from is quite an affluent area. Mm-hmm. So, I would be coming from a council estate going into a school that wasn't really catching people from that catchment area, to be honest with you. It was more Abbots Langley, Kings Langley, St Albans sort of people that would have gone to that school.
And did you experience any bullying? Because council estate going into...
No, I mean, we used to have to walk past a couple of schools on the way to school. There was always a little bit of violence that would happen between those. I wouldn't say it was bullying. It was mutually agreed upon as you were walking to school, and somebody wanted to suggest that you go a different way, I suppose. But so I often would walk to school. I think I took a bike to school every now and again, but it was, I suppose it's difficult to describe, Miranda, but it's one of those things, like when everybody's going out, you're the sort of, the one with less means, if you like, Mm-hmm. It was always important that you cleaned your football boots because they had to last you a longer period of time. You wouldn't be getting a new pair that quick. So it was always, and I'm still quite fastidious about that sort of stuff. I give the kids a hard time if their trainers are dirty or they don't take pride in the way that they look. So it's kind of, instilled in me and stayed with me over those years, I suppose.
And how old are your kids now?
The youngest is 21.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so they should be able to clean their trainers.
They should by now.
Yeah.
So you're at school.
Yeah.
Did you leave at 16 and then start work?
No, I left at 18. So okay. I did O-levels, did well at O-levels. I think I have 11 or 12, I don't know.
That is good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're all varying grades. I can't think what they are now. I did particularly well at maths, English, history. Those were the sort of subjects that I liked. Some that I hated. The sciences didn't really appeal to me, although I have O-levels in 1 or 2 of them. I don't know. But then went on to do A-levels, and that's kind of where it started to go wrong academically. Just because the guy who used to teach us maths, he was the deputy principal at the school. He got sick, so we had relief teachers for a year. So I didn't bother going.
You didn't bother?
No.
Didn't they call the parents and say, Nick hasn't been to school?
We were there. No, they didn't. No, we were there for the other classes, but I think when it was maths, we just used to head out and mess around and do something else. So I kind of missed a year when he was out for that year, and then he came back in the second year, and because it was applied maths, it was difficult to catch up. So I went from an A at O-level to I don't even know what I got at A-level. It could have been an E or something like that, a D or an E anyway, but a fail.
So you've got your A-levels, you failed.
Only one.
One.
I passed two. I got a history and English.
And did you get like A's and B's for that? Or?
No, I don't know. I think maybe two B's or a B and a C maybe. I don't know.
But this is really encouraging because we have our audience. It ranges from students who are doing GCSEs, A-levels, all the way up to PhD level. But it's from the classroom to the boardroom. So we also have board directors, CEOs. We've got everyone listening. Yeah. But I think this is really, I don't want to say encouraging, but this is supportive for any student that might be looking at A-level results or something's not going quite right in their education, for them to know that there is always another route. You can always resit, or there's another opportunity that might come your way. So tell me about, how did the opportunity for banking come your way?
I'll come back to that in a sec, because I was just sat with somebody at lunchtime today who dropped out of high school. And he's just recently sold a business for about 385 million euro. And he kind of has similar views to me, and these may go against some of your academic views. But I think the thing I find frustrating with education more than anything else is that each level just opens up the next level. So, you know, I have a son who's doing a degree at the moment, and I think it's finance and economics or business and economics. But really the degree doesn't matter. It's about how you apply yourself and how you work. And it shows that you can follow a course and you can achieve something with it, and that you're able to work and you're able to work individually and succeed your way through that. I just think too much importance is put on, the type of degree that you take and the grades that you get within that. It really is just a stepping stone to the next part of your life, which is your career. And whatever it may be, you can start in the world of banking with a geography degree. But if you've done well within that geography degree and you've applied yourself correctly, then it shows that you have the ability to prosper. And I just think as kids, I don't think we really think that way. I think everybody's trying, you're trying to think of what your career is going to be, and you really don't know, right? So the importance that is put on the degree and the grade within it, I think is massively overstated. Like, I do a lot of after dinner talks and speaking at conferences these days about, things that have happened to me. And the encouraging thing is that you look at, say, a number of audit firms, and they've clearly said this to me, they take a lot of graduate employees or trainees, but they're now also taking a lot of people straight from school. So they don't go to university. So whereas the traditional route is through university, they're now taking a lot of kids at 18. Now, they do the same accountancy courses, but the people here who are hungrier and work harder and want to achieve themselves, and they know they've got some educated competition, the guys who are coming straight from school are performing better. So there is a real change that's going on in that regard. So I'm not I wouldn't put pressure on my 21-year-old to go out and get a first, or, it's about life balance. And I think he has a good life balance as opposed to being too focused on what he's going to achieve through his degree. Because for me, I don't think the degree is irrelevant, but I don't think it has a great deal of impact on what he's going to do from the age of 22 onwards when he gets into work. And it's going to be more about him.
Well, there's so many cases where you have young people who are 21, they've got a degree from a really good university and they can't get a job. Yeah. This is a serious problem that the country is facing. So there are lots of the organisations that sponsor and donate to the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation. Sure. Many of them, whether it's law firms or banks, they do have apprenticeship schemes. And I think that's definitely a good route. I, like you, after my A-levels, I entered the world of banking. When I did go back to uni, I did it the hard way. I ended up going back in the evenings and doing my degree and all that sort of stuff.
But that in itself shows that your dedication and your application and your desire to succeed. And, I think that is more powerful
Yeah.
than a piece of paper that says you got a first in, I don't know, in law from Cambridge or
Yes.
wherever you got it from. I mean, there are certain roles within the world of banking that if you don't have a double maths degree, you're not getting anywhere near it. But there's also a lot of good firms out there, Bloomberg being one of them, where they, again, they take people from underprivileged backgrounds and put them on apprenticeship programs where they bring them through and they show them different parts of the business. So I think the message is that, I don't think your career or your business career really starts until after you've done a degree. It doesn't need to wait that long these days either.
I think when you had entered banking, you didn't really need a degree. And when I was entering banking, degrees were just becoming a thing. And that's why I thought, okay, I've got lots of friends who did go down uni, the actual, at 18, let me get a degree. So at least I'm more competitive. But I think now they are definitely heading towards the apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Clearly, there are lots of organisations that still would rather you have a degree, but I think it's really important to find your own route because everyone's got their own route to success and what might work for someone. But I think personality really stands well for the actual person who's looking for work because lots of the time I would get hired because people liked me.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest defining factor.
Yeah.
Like if you're able to work within a certain environment, you've got good interpersonal skills that you can communicate because a lot of people don't communicate.
Yeah.
They're all operating in silos, trying to do their work and not asking the questions that they should ask. So I think, having those good interpersonal skills brings with it a degree of confidence and comfort in difficult situations. And I think it's the most powerful thing. And so, if I look around at my own kids, I think they all have that ability. And I think it's the thing that, regardless of what degree or what grade they've got or how they did at school or whether they can count to 10, all of them can. But, it really doesn't matter. I think what will engender their success going forward is them and their ability to survive and prosper within within situations in the workplace. I don't think a degree or anything that you learn at school does that. It's do you talk to older people as much as you do to people of your own age? How do you get on with peers and can you hold yourself in those situations? I think that's far more important. Unfortunately for me, I think I was very socially adept. I worked for a very blue-blooded bank where everybody went to Eton or rugby and, came out of Cambridge and Oxford. And so academically, they were all very good, had great knowledge, but they didn't have a great deal of understanding of how the business how the business fitted together, and for that reason they were unable to challenge. And the Wall Street Journal used to run a phrase which was "knowledge is nothing without understanding," and that's so true.
That is very true.
Yeah.
So, Nick Leeson, former derivatives trader who caused the 1995 collapse of Barings Bank, the UK's first and oldest merchant bank. And they're saying through fraudulent, unauthorised, speculative trades, resulting in losses of approximately $1.4 billion at the time. How do you feel about that statement?
I'm sure I could pick a couple of factual errors in it, but
So tell me, what are the factual errors?
Look, I'm only messing with you.
Yeah.
Look, it was £862 million. How you quantify that in dollar terms is questionable. I think at the time it was 1.2. Like obviously 1.4 is a more is a bigger number, and obviously carries with that a bit more amazement, I suppose. So look, it did happen. For me, it will always be the most embarrassing period of my life because I always wanted to be successful and be at the top of the organisation. and making all of the important decisions. And I'll always be remembered for the most embarrassing part of everything that happened to me during that period. And that doesn't change, right? So, you go through a remorseful period where, whilst you're in prison, looking back at everything and taking it into account and trying to work out how you would have preferred to be and be, totally remorseful for it. But at the same time, you've got a second chance at life. You've got to take it. The judge, when he sits you, he doesn't sit you down, but when you're standing up in the dock and he's handing down the sentence, he doesn't say, 6.5 years and 14 years of remorse, right? So remorse is a very personal thing. I think you pull away the veneer of the person that you were, and you're very honest about it, and you take yourself to town, you pull yourself apart, and then you can move forward. But if you don't have that introspection and you don't really challenge and become exceptionally honest in that regard, I know it's belatedly, but you can't move forward. And when you see other road trading episodes and other people that've been involved in scandal, they always try to shift the blame and probably make themselves feel a little bit better. The bank knew what I was doing. There was a pressure to perform. It's all rubbish. Like their personal choices. You took the choice. Own the choice. Be accountable and be responsible and move forward. And I think that's the most powerful thing you can do. I think far too much in life, and certainly, my own children would do it as well. There's always an excuse, and if there's an action, there's a consequence. And, I think people struggle to see that and try to divert around it. So if you do something or you say something, own it, move on. And, if it causes a bit of a stir, you've got to own that as well.
So you own the fact that it was your unauthorized trading that made Barings Bank go 100%, bust. Yeah. Because it's funny, certain people have said to me, I heard that Nick Leeson was the scapegoat and there was lots of other stuff, but no. Not
whatsoever. Like I took every single trade, I hid every single trade within that. Should the bank have known more about what was going on? You can have conspiracy theories, left, right and centre. And, I think far too many people do that in the modern age. Everybody's got a reason why somebody's doing something, and, they know better than the person that's doing it. So it's all rubbish. Like the person that's involved in the situation is the one who knows best. And, I didn't do it knowingly well, that's not right. I knew what I was doing. I knew I shouldn't be doing it. And I continued. And for that reason, I have to be accountable for everything that happened. Was I a scapegoat? Some people say you're a scapegoat for the system. I think the banks, what the banks want to do, whenever there's a road trading scandal or there's a scandal within the banking, within banking or any financial institution, the first method of defense is blame somebody. And that works for the organization because it takes away people looking at why your systems, your processes and your controls were so rubbish that it happened. So let's focus on the individual. It's not scapegoating, but let's pour all of the attention there whilst we get our house in order. And then when eventually they double back on us and say, well, we can say, well, we've done this. Everything's okay now. And you see it time and time again, certainly in the world of finance. But, it's just the way it is. But I don't think that's scapegoating. I did everything that I did. Yeah.
And at what point during that process did you think, oh, my God, this has gone too far? The bank is going to go bust, or I'm in so much trouble now with the debt that I've plopped up here.
I never realised that the bank was going to go bust, right? Not until the day I left, right? And probably then not till the day after.
And the day that you left, is that because you knew the bank was going bust and you left, or it just worked out?
No, it was the 23rd of February 1995. It was the first day that somebody had come to me with a reconciliation of the positions. And, you've got a reconciliation in black and white. They don't add up. There's no way to explain it away. But it's the first time in 3 years that somebody's done that reconciliation. You know, I used to do it at Morgan Stanley. If your positions didn't agree, you didn't trade that day. It was plain and simple. You know, it's like banking 101, but it wasn't done for 3 years at Barings. But when somebody comes to you and it's in black and white, you know, I'd get phone calls from Andrew Bayliss, who was the head of trading at Barings, right? Career banker, you know, head of the trading floor, one of the founding fathers of Barings Securities, which was formed in 1985. And Andrew would phone me up and he'd say, you know, I'm looking at the trade sheets today. You've got a position limit of 250 lots of the Nikkei 225, but there's a trade here for 10,000 lots. There's a trade here for 5,000 lots. So he said, you're clearly in breach of your limit. And I was. And, you know, thinking on the spot, you come up with the most nonsensical answer that immediately pops into your head. And you think back.
What was that?
Yeah, so the answer was that, you know, you're not seeing one trade. What that is the system is grouping together trades at the same price. So really, you know, that's 20 trades of 250 equals 5,000, or 40 trades equals, which is rubbish. But again, going back to the point that we made earlier, if you understood the business, you wouldn't be asking me about the trade. You'd be asking the order filler in Osaka who filled the trade and say, how did you receive that order? And the answer would have been buy 5,000 at market, followed by 10,000 at market, followed by another 10,000 at market. So, you know, you're getting into a breach that is now 100 or 150 times your position limit. But because he didn't understand how the market fitted together, his challenge was beyond superficial. Right, and easy to divert. And as long as I was confident with my response, even though it was complete and utter rubbish, and you get off the phone and you think,
I got away with that.
I shouldn't have said that because that's just absolute rubbish. But, you know, confidence is a thing that gets you a long way.
I think confidence is definitely a key to success and having that self-belief. I've always had that. Where do you get your confidence from?
Confidence in what way, I suppose?
Well, just the fact that you were confident enough to, even when you were in your 20s, to say to, you know, the general manager, this is why the positions are the way they are.
I think at that stage I wasn't necessarily thinking about it. It's probably something that pops up more with hindsight. But, you know, I had no option, right? You know, I know what the situation is. I know it's getting worse. I can't be exposed because I've got a huge fear of failure. You know, as much as I wanted to be successful, the real thing that I couldn't deal with was, you know, my failing being exposed or being brought to light. So that was the thing that really held me back, putting my hand up, telling people what was going on. So, you know, over the years, I've dealt with that, and I don't have such a fear of failure. Like everybody, you don't like failing, but you know, people do fail and move on, and they, as you've said, you know, you can reinvent yourself after that failure. But it was never a clear path. I mean, I think from the time that I was in prison in Germany and then Singapore, you know, the horizon was always quite short. So I was only looking in terms of 2 months and 3 months in terms of what I'd be doing. And, you know, that reinvention, if you like, has happened very slowly. You've got to be comfortable with it yourself. You know, like even today, I'm talking to a firm of lawyers earlier, and all of their clients who've flown in from all over the world, and you know they're talking about bankruptcy and certain different cases that they've got going on. This was prior to me getting up there, but cases that they've got in New York, and they're all very, you know, very good and professional lawyers. But, you know, when I stand up to talk, like I'm not there to teach or preach or say anything. I'm there to tell you a story. I think there's a lot of personal messages from it. There's a lot of messages for organisations as well, but they have to take those on board. I'm not going to say, you know, my ethical compass is better than anybody else's now, because it's not, right? At the time, it was shocking because I was only really focused on how I could survive and how I could push through the next series of days. You know, hope it has improved over time. You know, I don't have the worst ever ethical compass these days. I do think about how my actions impact on other people. I do think about, you know, how my actions will impact on the organisation. And, you know, I think I'm more considerate and, but,
And sometimes that comes with age, or not.
I think it comes with experience.
Yeah.
Like you can experience a lot at a young age. Yeah. I think maturity is important.
Yeah.
I think, I was 25 when I was working in Singapore. I wasn't mature from a business perspective. I'm probably still not mature now. I'm 59 next month. I can still do stupid things from time to time.
I think it's good to be young at heart,
Yeah, I don't know.
So look.
My wife would disagree with some of the things I get up to, I think. But
so for people watching and listening to this, they might not understand what a derivative is. Before we go on to, I want to move on to your time in prison, but before we do that, what is a derivative? Explain to the audience in basic terms.
Yeah, there were futures and options. So, and they're not as complex as, they're definitely not as complex as people make out. They are quite vanilla instruments. A future is a 3-month contract. So, they originated originally back, a long time ago when farmers wanted a confidence about what a price was going to be in 3 months' time for their crops or 6 months. So, it's a 3, 6, 9, 12-month contract on a commodity. Now, those commodities are branched out into indices and precious metals and pretty much anything these days. You can, there's, I think, pretty much anything. Whereas options are there's a similarity in terms of there's a strike price which you buy or sell in the future. So you're trying to predict where that market is going to go, but you can buy and sell them. So they can be hedging instruments. Some people speculate with them. You need both in a market. You need speculators and you need investors and people who are hedging. Otherwise, the market wouldn't exist. You wouldn't get the two-way flow within it. Warren Buffett says derivatives are a weapon of mass destruction, and if they're not controlled, yes, they can be. And I proved that in Singapore because, massive unhedged risk to the market, and the market does. Over time, the market is always efficient, and if there is something wrong, it will force that out.
So, you're in prison.
Yeah.
You get found out, you get caught because you were trying to escape to go back to Frankfurt.
I don't think anybody escapes to go to Frankfurt, but
according to the Rogue Trader film, the Hollywood film.
No, look, I did. I was arrested in Frankfurt. It wasn't by design.
Yeah.
I left Singapore on the 23rd of February. I ended up in a place called Kota Kinabalu, which is the Malaysian half of Borneo. The plan was to go to Phuket and meet one of the guys from the trading floor just to ascertain, quite how bad the situation was. I knew there was going to be a loss. I could roughly quantify it because it was equivalent to the amount of money that I had from London. So it was going to be in the 650, 700 million range. But I didn't know that the bank was only worth £250 million. So, until I saw the news story, I didn't realise that the bank was going to collapse. I knew that I was in a lot of trouble, probably, wasn't really going through the process of thinking I'm going to jail. How long am I going to jail for? It was very much a fight or flight type response, and it was flight. And that's why I fled to Kota Kinabalu. And then eventually, by a very circuitous route, the plane that I managed to get back to Europe, because there was a dilemma. I didn't want to be caught in Asia because the prison was going to be tough. Also, my wife at the time was traveling with me, and clearly didn't want her to be caught in Asia either, because I think she would have gone to jail in Singapore as well. So do we go to Australia or New Zealand and look for a Western sort of regime there? Or do we go back to Europe? And so the first flight that we could get was to Frankfurt. And so they arrested me as the plane arrived into Frankfurt airport.
What was one of your first thoughts when you actually got caught from?
I think it's, a lot of people come out with a cliche to say it was a massive sense of relief. It's rubbish, because you just got the next stage that you've got to face. So I've got, three, I don't know how many people met me off the plane, but they say there were 3 or 4, fairly stern looking German nationals, didn't have a great sense of humour between them. And you're going through this process that is really new to you, scary. And so it's hurdle after hurdle. So, you get escorted through the airport. There's a lot of media there shouting out things at you, and you just don't know what's going on. And, you very slowly, you go through the process. The British Vice Consul arrived. They kind of recommend a couple of lawyers that you can speak to, but they're not really doing that because they're not allowed to do that. You phone a lawyer, and I'm being accused of travelling on a false passport, which I'm not. I wouldn't have known how to get a false passport, but that's what Interpol, or that's what the Singaporean authorities said to Interpol, so that's why I was arrested. 6 or 7 hours later, they change it to a charge of cheating, which equates to false accounting, which is nearer to the truth than travelling on a false passport. So the Singaporeans arrive, they want to take me back to Singapore. The Germans won't let them, so they put me into a police cell overnight, and then I go to a place called Höchst, which is a medium security prison in Germany, to start a period which lasted 8 to 9 months before I was extradited back to Singapore. So, within that period, I see the Serious Fraud Office came over to interview me, decide that it's better that I go back to Singapore than to the UK, although I pled guilty to anything that they wanted me to plead guilty to at the time. And it's around the time that the Yugoslav states are breaking up. So there's a lot of gun runners and Kurds and people in this medium security prison. And, you've no idea what the future holds, but you've got to survive day by day.
So the first morning you wake up in prison, what are you thinking?
Well, you're under 24-hour supervision. And you do a week of that in Germany. So it's immensely boring. Your mind is working overtime. So you don't know what the next hour, the next day holds. So you've got that constant trepidation. Obviously, you're in prison, and, I would imagine that at the time your experience and my experience of prison would have been roughly the same. What you see in the movies, and that doesn't really paint a great picture. So you've kind of got to get used to the situation. And, again, I don't know if I joke about this, but I do genuinely mean it. As socially adept I was working with the blue-blooded boys and girls who worked at Barings, I was equally socially adept in prison, because of my working class upbringing. I knew the type of person that some of these people were. And you've got to get by.
Did you make any friends in prison? No.
Who goes to prison to make friends?
But you never know. You never know.
Well, I'm sure some drug dealers do to improve their network. I don't know. But no, you don't make friends. Well, I'm sure some people come out of prison, but just because they're going to recommit they come up with some stupid scheme while they're there. But no, you don't make friends in prison. It's the same as banking, right? How many friends do you still have from the world of banking?
I can count on one hand.
Yeah, I can count on none.
Yeah.
No, that's not entirely true. There's one or two. There's one or two, but it's, again, I think, and it's not necessarily just banking, but, and I may be doing banking a disfavour, but, people are acquaintances. It's a fast moving business. You're moving. People don't necessarily, I always view, certainly on the trading side of it, I always view trading as quite gladiatorial. There's a winner and there's a loser, all right? And the losers get left behind. I think that's why you don't make as many friends within the industry as you might within other industries. So, I have one or two good friends who are still from the world of banking, but it is very limited. Everybody else who, it looks like you're good friends at the time and you're spending time with them. But, you know, like when you look back, it didn't really, it was just an acquaintanceship.
I think, but also just backtracking a little bit on your journey, you started in the back office and so did I, and you ended up on the trading floor and so did I. And so that takes a lot of resilience to get out, because back then it was really hard to make that transition from back office, middle office, front office. And the fact that you made that transition.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily was. I think certainly, you know, you followed 10 years after me. And I think it would have been a lot harder for you. If you were hardworking, if you were diligent, if you were accurate.
Smart, you've got to pick it up.
Yeah, you've got to be hardworking. I mean, during the period that I worked at Morgan Stanley and Barings, you know, we used to have these, you know, there were many times where there'd be a train strike, but the train strike could go on for a week, and you used to have to work through the night, and there was reduced staff in the offices, and some of us would sleep. You know, they'd find us hotels, and but you'd basically work through the night, shower in the gym the next morning, and then go to work. But you know, there's certain people who'll do that, and there's other people that will just complain all the time. And you know, I think I was lucky that I moved out to Asia at the right time. I think when you're in Asia, you're very much as an expat, you're a big fish in a small pond. So you get noticed a lot more. So I worked in Japan for a period of time. I was in Indonesia, which was quite a dangerous environment. At the time, we used to have a bodyguard, a driver who had a gun. So, you know, he was a driver who could shoot. And, you know, was in Hong Kong for a period of time, obviously Singapore, and spent a bit of time in Germany as well with opening one of the offices there.
So while you were in prison, you got cancer. Are you okay now? Are you clear?
Yeah.
Good. I'm really pleased to hear that. So at what point during your prison?
I was going to say something.
What were you going to say?
It would have been rude.
What were you going to say? Just say it.
I haven't had a poo today. But no, I don't mind. No, I'm joking. I have had a poo.
Okay, that's good to know. This is so
I'm
random.
Fine.
We've both had a long day, so
I was diagnosed. I spent a bit of time.
Was it bowel cancer? What?
Colon, yeah.
Oh, right. Hence the comment.
Well, no, not really. No, not really. But yeah.
Okay, we'll just move on. But yeah, so at what point? Was it at the beginning, the middle, the end of your sentence?
I was diagnosed. I had an operation. I was diagnosed and I had an operation in 1998. So I was in prison I was in Germany in March of 95. I was back to Singapore November, December 95. And then August of 98, I was having an emergency operation to remove a tumour that was then 10 centimetres by 7 centimetres. So
that's large. That's like stage 3, is it?
It was stage 2, so it was bordering stage 3. It was, you know, my lung had collapsed. It was... I was I'd spent some time in the punishment cells in Singapore just for refusing to do something. They wanted me to change my cellmates, but, you know, they would always give you 2 people from different triad gangs. So there would always be a bit of distrust, dislike, and that would normally manifest itself in a fight at some point between week 2 and week 4 of being in the cell. And then there was one occasion where they gave me 2 Malay inmates, but they were from different gangs. So one was from Amiga, the other one was from the 14K Triad gang. So there was a bit of dislike, but they shared a religion because they were both Muslim. So they would pray in the cell, and they got on okay. And then after about 4 weeks, the guards came and they took us out and they said, "We're going to change your cellmates." And I said, "Look, it doesn't make any sense. These are the first ones who haven't fought." And they said, "Well, no, look, we've got a directive here that you've got to change these 2 for somebody else." And I said, "Okay, look, I refuse to go back in the cell." And they said, "Well, then we have to take you to the punishment cells." So you go to the punishment cells, you're in a cell on your own, they're quite dirty. There's a cat flap in the door that they give you your food through, and there's no windows. So they turn the light on during the evening. They turn it off during the day, so there's a bit of sensory deprivation. And normally if you go to the punishment cells, you're there for 3 days for a minor offence and then 7 days for a major offence. But the dilemma that they had is that if you go to the punishment cells and you receive a sentence, that they have to add the days onto your sentence as well. So everybody knew I was being released on the 3rd of July, 1999. So if they'd sentenced me, it wouldn't have been the 3rd of July. It would have been the 3rd of July +3 or +7. So they never called me for sentencing. They just wanted me to apologise. So I spent 31 days in the punishment cell. And then one day because the guards are all triad gang members as well. So one of the Indian guards, he was a sergeant. Sergeant Singh, his name was. He came to see me and he said, you've got to go back to the general area. And I said, look, no, I'm not apologising. He said, no, you don't have to. So I went back to the general area and then they called me for a visit and it was the British Vice Consul that was there. So, I'd lost a lot of weight during that period and, my eyes were bloodshot and that sort of stuff. Didn't look particularly healthy, I'd say. And she got very worried about that. So she came back every month for the remaining 17 months of my sentence. Was having a bit of stomach pain. And, they took me down to see the doctor, who was only part qualified, I would say. He gave me a few tests and then eventually sent me to an outside prison an outside prison ward to get some tests. And they felt a lump immediately. And so they immediately put me upstairs into this prison ward where they chain you to the bed by your leg. Guards have all got guns, and if you want to go to the toilet, you put your hand up and they escort you to the toilet. It was on one of those visits to the toilet that my lung collapsed and they found me round the toilet bowl.
Wow. And
then I had an emergency operation to remove the tumour.
And after they removed it, you didn't need chemo or radiotherapy?
Oh, no, I had chemo. I had chemo for 6 months. So
right.
I used to, so it was like a 5-day on, 3 weeks off process. So I'd go out with 2 guards. I'd be handcuffed to 2 guards, go to a local hospital and they'd give me the chemo and then I'd go back in the evening. But obviously I had 38 staples in my stomach. So, you're recovering from that and you're trying to, because you sleep on the floor and you've got no stomach muscles, it's impossible to get up. So it was really difficult for a while. And then they put me into the infirmary, as they used to call it. So they used to have these metal beds. There was no mattresses on them or anything. So they used to have these metal beds, but it had a space to put your arms and legs, because if people were going mad, or KCL they used to call it in Singapore, they would chain them to these beds if they were creating and getting violent. So I used to sleep on one of those for a while whilst I was going and having the chemotherapy.
Was that the worst time of your life?
No, I don't think so.
You mean there's even worse than that?
No, well, look, I think the collapse of the bank is probably the worst period.
Yeah.
But
I guess all of that, the hospital, the prison, all of that.
Yeah, but it kind of gives you something to fight against. Everybody expects you to be ill and giving in, and so it's, I don't know if it's the stiff upper lip and that sort of stuff, but because everybody expects you to be so ill during that period, you kind of, it gives you a motivation to go forward as well and prove them wrong.
So coping with stress, back from the brink, Nick Leeson.
Yeah.
Really good book. And one of the questions that you answer here is, are stress problems increasing? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so.
Today in 2026.
Yeah, I think people are more, people talk about it more, which I think is a positive. I think men are still the worst at it. But, whether it's health, finance, whether it's your work or your business, I think, and again, I hate cliches full stop, but, communicating and talking to people about your issues does help. For me in Singapore, when I was trying to cope with everything that was going on for me, as I've said, I wasn't looking to make friends in prison. So there wasn't really any conversations where you unloaded or offloaded on people. So I kept a diary and would write to myself every day about the things that I was thinking through. And I would keep a page every day pretty much for the 3.5 year period. I'd do silly stuff like draw pictures as well. Got kicked out of art when I was 11, so I'm not very good at drawing pictures.
I think drawing is great. I did a TED talk on Dare to Draw Your Dream Life. I think drawing, all of that helps with stress, you know, just to help you manage stress.
You wouldn't be able to work out what my pictures were. Like they made me. I had to shred the books before I left.
Oh, so you couldn't take them? Because I was going to say, so this book, Rogue Trader.
Yeah. You used
some of the notes, but clearly, if you had to strip them.
Rogue Trader was written whilst I was in Germany.
Right.
So, it's, that's just my immediate account of how everything happened. So there is a ghostwriter, Edward Whitley, who was involved in it. I think you can tell the chapters that he wrote. They're quite flowery.
Yeah.
And not me. But
so there's one part here where when you were talking about, what happened, and I was ashamed of myself and what I had become. It started off so small, but had rapidly seized hold and was now all across me like a cancer.
Yeah.
Thinking of cancer reminded me of my mother. Thank God she'd died before she'd seen me turn into this person. It was not what she had brought me up to do.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
No, I think it's accurate. I think behaviour exists on a continuum. You look at your different, the behaviours that you have, the way that you react to things. And I think there's a good end and a bad end to that spectrum. And you veer, but you move between the two. And I was certainly at the bad end of that spectrum at the time. My mother would have wanted me to have a career in banking, accountancy, or the law. And, I probably touched on them all during that period, and definitely not in the way that she would have wanted me to. It was all about achieving and moving forward and prospering and having a better life. She wasn't happy with her life. So that's why she wanted better for her children. And so sort of, that sort of mentality and ethos still stays with me today. I want my kids to have the absolute best that they can. And, I'll support them through that process. But they've got to work hard as well. It's not going to be given to you. Anything that's given to you isn't worthwhile and you won't keep it.
Yeah, definitely. So they made a film, Rogue Trader.
Yeah.
I watched that over Christmas again. Ewan McGregor played you. How do you feel about, for those that don't know, a rogue trader, the definition is an employee of a financial institution who carries out business without the knowledge or approval of his or her bosses. How do you feel about the Hollywood film? Did you get involved in that process, or did they make the film regardless? And how do you feel about Ewan McGregor playing you?
I'm sure that people come out with, people in similar situations when asked that question come out with lots of different superlatives and answers. We never expected the movie to be made. The rationale for the movie, as it was Sir David Frost wanted to do an interview with me for Breakfast with Frost, his BBC programme. There was an agreement to do that for £15,000, which was going to be paid to my ex-wife at the time. When they came to get the payment out of the BBC, there was a little bit of paperwork difficulty. So rather than it being a payment from the BBC, it then became a payment from David Paradigm Productions, which is Sir David's company. And the way that they put the paperwork together, it was for an option on the movie. But nobody expected the movie to be made. I was in prison in Singapore in 1997, 98, and stories started then about Ewan McGregor playing me, and Sir David obviously had put it all together and got the people involved that he wanted to be involved, got a producer, James D.A.R.E. So I don't think about it a great deal because it's a period of my life that is the most embarrassing period of my life. So, some people say they love the movie. Some people say it was dumbed down too much. Some people, really don't have an opinion. I'm kind of the don't have an opinion type of thing, even though it's about me.
How true is that film?
I've only seen it twice.
Yeah.
The first time I saw it was with Sir David Frost and Ben Kingsley, the actor. which is weird in itself. So
I know.
so we had a private viewing in a place in Ladbroke Grove.
Oh, right.
And some friends came up from Watford, and Sir David was there.
It wasn't the Electric Cinema or anything like that.
Don't know where it was.
Oh, right.
Viz used to be there.
Oh, I see.
John Brown Publishing used to be in the building. So Sir David was serving people Becks, and it was just a surreal experience. Some people were laughing, some people were crying. I had a few beers with Sir David and Ben Kingsley. Didn't really remember too much about it, to be honest with you. I think there's parts of it that are accurate, and there's parts that are over-egged or underplayed, and they don't really stick in your mind. So yeah, I don't have a DVD or a video of it at home.
Oh, it's on YouTube and Prime and all that other stuff.
I don't think it's not on Prime, but you can get it on YouTube.
Yeah. So this is a Successful Mindset podcast, D.A.R.E. And what successful mindset tips do you have, or habits that you would swear by, to help you get to the next stage of success?
Yeah, look, I don't think I have any really. I mean, the way that I think about things is you need to be as honest and accountable as you possibly can be. I think that always, like I've done so many after dinners and keynote conferences over the years, and I think people always go away knowing that it's been candid, it's been exceptionally honest, and therefore they've enjoyed it. But I think, the more honest you can be, you have to be accountable, you have to be responsible. I think I would always encourage people to ask for help and advice. As you're going through your business career, you don't know everything. Accept that, and you're surrounded by people that can help you.
And what's your version of success today in 2026?
My children. It's just I don't as much as I would love, another opportunity to achieve success. I'm at peace with it, and I think I get more I get more success out of them succeeding, and certainly enjoy it a lot more. I'm comfortable with who I am, what I managed to achieve. I didn't lick it off the ground. I was very good at what I did, albeit for a short period of time. Have to take a bit of grief from people from time to time, a couple of keyboard warriors. If they're talking about me, I'm not really bothered. But it goes with the territory, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we're coming to the end. This has gone so quickly, nearly 1 hour. So we always end with, what do you dare our audience to do? But we've also got some really quick questions as well. So what do you dare our audience to do?
Be honest, I think.
Be honest.
Yeah.
Short and sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so some quick questions. What's your idea of perfect happiness?
Look, just a loving family. I think when I was growing up, my family weren't the most attentive or affectionate. So I think that's always to be encouraged. As it's a very working class, get the job done type of thing, and we survive for another day. But I couldn't remember my dad or my mother cuddling me or anything like that. So I think that sort of environment is something that everybody should be offered. Yes.
And what's your favourite book, apart from your own, clearly?
My own.
Apart from that, what's your favourite book?
I don't read a great deal, weirdly.
Or your favourite publication or newsletter? I've just launched a newsletter called "What's the 411?" I'll send it to you.
So
maybe that can be your new response.
Your newsletter, yeah.
Oh, bless you. What's your favourite song?
Again, I don't know. Probably something by The Jam or Paul Weller or something like A Town Called Malice.
Yeah.
That's kind of the sort of music I liked when I was younger. I'm not really big into music. I watch sport.
And what's your favourite sport?
I'll watch anything.
Oh, okay. And your favourite film?
Road Trade? No.
Let's see where this is going.
Yeah, no. again, really, I don't mind a good movie, but I don't know, Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, I do.
Another prison one.
Yes, yes. And we had Martha Lane Fox on, and her episode goes live very soon, Baroness Martha Lane Fox. And I've asked her the questions, heels, flats or trainers. We're all about equality here.
Sure.
So if I'm asking the ladies, I've got to ask the gents. Heels, flats or trainers?
Oh, well, look, it has to be trainers.
Oh, right. And last question. Who's the most famous person that you've got in your WhatsApp or in your phone that you could text now and they would reply?
A very good friend of mine used to play football for Manchester City, so I could WhatsApp him now or phone him and he would.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the D.A.R.E podcast. Thank you so much, Nick Leeson, for joining us.
No,
You've just been listening to Nick Leeson on the D.A.R.E podcast. We're all about successful mindsets. D stands for having the determination to dream bigger. A is all about the action. R is the resilience, the reinvention, and the E is the education and the energy. So until next time, thank you very much for tuning in. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and watch us where you get your usual podcast channels and platforms, and also watch us on YouTube. Thank you very much and keep supporting. Tune in every month and then hit the repeat button to become the best version of yourself.